Hi everyone, today we're going to be using clay and we're going to be creating something that looks like a little tiny box with a lid that you can put your teeth in when you lose them for the tooth fairy. So what you're going to start with is this placemat. It's a little piece of fabric. It helps the clay not stick to your table. And you're going to have a little bag with a little ball of clay. So this is all the clay that you're going to get to make your box and your lid. What I want you to do first is I want you to break this ball into 2 equal pieces. Okay, so now you have 2 pieces. I want you to set one to the side and then take that one piece. Now what you're going to do is you're going to roll this in your hands into a ball. Now what I'm doing is I'm going back and forth with my hands like this to roll it into a nice even ball. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to change the shape anyway. But once you have your ball, then you're going to take your finger and you're going to push a little hole into the ball like this. Now when you push your hole, you don't want to go all the way to the bottom because you don't want to poke through the bottom. Just a little hole enough to get your finger in there. And then what you're going to do, this is called a pinch pot. You're going to take your thumb and your finger, you can even use 2 fingers or 3, and you're going to start to pinch the sides of the ball and twist it in your hand. So you notice as I'm twisting it and pinching it, the ball or the hole is getting bigger and it's starting to make like a little bowl. So as I pinch this more and more and more, it's just going to get bigger. A bigger bowl. Now you don't want to pinch it too much because notice the more I pinch it, the thinner this is getting. You don't want it to be too thin because then it's going to fall apart. You can also press down a little bit more if you notice you have a lot of clay on the bottom here, and you can pinch the bottom a little bit more to make your bowl bigger. So once you think you kind of have reached your limit, you can't go and pinch anymore because it's getting too thin here. You might see it's starting to crack a little bit. Then you're going to kind of take some water on your fingers and smooth it out a bit. So just a little drop of water in your water cup onto your fingers. And what you're going to do is just smooth out your bowl. The water acts as like almost like something that just finishes the clay nicely and makes it look nice and smooth. So I'm going around the edge here to smooth out the edge. I'm going in the middle to smooth out the middle, and I'm going to go on the outsides to smooth the outsides a bit. So you don't want any cracks. You want your clay to be nice and smooth. You also don't want to add too much water though, because the more water you add, the more likely it is to fall apart. So just one finger in the water, not your whole hand. Now I might want to even smooth out the bottom of it so that that's even. All right, once I think I've got it pretty smooth and even, I might tap it on my table just to get it nice and flat on the bottom there. Tap it once or twice. All right, so my bowl is pretty much done. Now I'm gonna use the rest of my scraps to make a lid. So I'm gonna take this and roll it into a ball, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna smash it in my hands a bit, and then smash it onto my placemat a bit. Now you also have a rolling pin at your table. You can use this to roll out your clay even more. And I'm going to use it just a bit to roll out my clay. So I'm using both hands and just rolling it, flipping it over and rolling it. You don't want this to get too thin though. It should be kind of the same thickness as your bowl lid or your bowl top. All right, now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this little cardboard circle that I have at my table with my tools, and I'm going to place it in the middle. Then I'm going to use this little wooden tool. It looks almost like a little butter knife. And I'm going to trace this circle with my wooden tool. And once I've traced all around it, I can take the cardboard off. Then I want to use that tool to cut it out. So I have to press harder all the way to the table to cut this circle out. All right, I've got it. Put your scraps to the side. You'll use that for the very last step. Now this is my lid. It should fit pretty nicely onto my bowl. If it doesn't fit pretty nicely, I can cut out a little bit more. I can keep cutting the edges a bit, but it should fit pretty nicely here. So now what I'm going to do with my lid is I'm also going to smooth it out. You'll notice that there might be some cracks or rough edges. You don't want it to be rough on the edges, so I'm going to smooth out the top, the bottom, and the sides. All right, that looks pretty good. One more on the top. All right, finally, we're gonna make a little piece to lift our lid. So you're gonna take your scraps again, and you're just gonna take a little piece, and you're gonna roll that into a ball. And this is gonna be the piece that sticks on the top that opens the lid. So you can't just attach it like that, it won't stay. What you have to do is you actually have to make a little bit of crisscross lines using your wooden tool on the spot that you want to put the ball, and the same thing on the ball, the bottom. Okay, so it's going to go like that. Then put a little drop of water on each of those little scratches that you made. This is called scoring and slipping. It helps your pieces stick together, and I'm just going to wedge that in there really good so it sticks. The water is almost like glue at this point. It's sticking that piece. Now, I'm gonna take my lid off and just make sure everything looks good here. That looks like it's stuck pretty well. But you know what I think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a little bit of my scraps and I'm gonna create something called a Band-Aid. So I'm gonna take some little thin wormies, just rolling it out kind of thin like this. And I'm gonna stick these thin wormies right by the circle, and I'm going to use my wooden tool and press the wormy into that crack. And you know what this does? This is like a Band-Aid. It helps this piece of clay stick to this piece of clay and not come off, almost like tape. I'm going to make a couple more wormies here, and I'm going to go all around that circle. Put the wormies around, and what I'm going to do is smooth it with my wooden tool. Smooth it, smooth it, smooth it. Almost like tape. Now that's on there really good. Now that's not gonna come off. One more wormy. Smooth it really good. And now you'll notice I'm getting a little bit not very smooth here, so maybe I'll add a little bit more water and smooth out the wormies. Wow, so the wormies attached to the circle, and it looks almost like now they're the same piece of clay. Now that is never gonna fall off. That's perfect. So this is gonna be the piece that attaches onto that, and I can open it like that. Okay, so my bowl is pretty much done here. Now, if you wanted to get really fancy, here's something you could do. Maybe you don't want your bowl to be a circle. Maybe you want it to be like a square or a different shape. You could take your tools and try and mold your bowl into a different shape. Like if I wanted a square, I could start to mold some corners like this and pinch corners to make it more square-like. The only thing is though, I would have to make my lid a square, so I have to cut this into a square. Or I've seen people do this. They've taken their bowl before and they've made it more like a heart by putting a little piece in and a little corner down like this. And you can smooth that into a heart too. Now the only thing though is that if this is going to be a heart, so does this. This needs to be a heart too. So I would have to do the same thing. I would have to cut my lid like this. And I would have to try and press this down into a point so that it looks more like a heart shape. Now this is kind of an advanced technique. It might be a challenge. If you don't want a challenge and you think you're good with just a circle, that's fine, or you can try a different shape. It's up to you. Just make sure after you mold that, you smooth that out. I'm getting a little bit rough there. I want to smooth that out. Okay, now when you're done with your box and your lid, you're gonna go see Miss Buettner, because before she can put this in the clay oven, we have to carve your initials of your name on the bottom. So Miss Buettner's gonna do this step for you. She's gonna carve your first name initial and your last name initial on your box and on your lid so that we know it's yours. Because in the clay oven, you can't write your name with a pencil. You have to carve it. Okay? All right, friends, I can't wait to see your work. When you're done, you're gonna take all your little scrap of clay, you're gonna hand it to Miss Buettner because we wanna save this clay for different clay projects. You're gonna wash your hands, of course, and put your tools away in the basket at your table. All right, friends, happy art making.